So welcome to this week's episode of Leaders on a Mission, where I'm joined by inspiring leaders driven by the impact of creating a healthy and sustainable world. Now, in today's episode, I'm joined by Sekhar Boddupalli, a life sciences technology leader. Now, Sekhar spent his career commercializing innovative food products and solutions. And I've got to know Sekhar pretty well over the last few years. And Sekhar, it's great to have you on the show. Really appreciate your time and looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Simon. Likewise, I really am looking forward to this fireside chat and appreciate the opportunity as well.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So let's take it all the way back, Sekhar. I'm thinking early influences of a young kind of Sekhar growing up, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was obviously quite a long time ago. So, and the early passion and ambition very early in my career was when I was doing my PhD work, my doctoral thesis work at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And I would say what really fascinated me at that time was this whole systems biology approach. And mind you, I'm talking about early 80s.
Right.
So in early 80s, the word systems biology approach sounded like jargon or something that people would say, what are you talking about? Systems biology approach. The term was not even known. So I was doing my PhD actually trying to study how animals adapted to environmental stress conditions, like cold stress, heat stress. Biochemically, how do animals adapt to those stress conditions? Not acute stress, but chronic stress, right? So this was like quite fascinating. I worked with I would say one of the best biochemists I have ever met in my life, Professor Ram Sharma. And he was a genius. And the way he would think about a problem, he was the early influencer in my career on how to holistically look at a problem and not be, plugged into one specific approach or one specific thought process. So that's how I started my career. And that passion carried through my entire career, which is looking at a problem holistically and not to come in with a prejudiced and a predetermined way of thinking and trying to put a square peg in a round hole. so that's what my earlier influence as a young guy, going back almost 40 years into my journey into science.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Thank you for that. And what about at that time when you were doing your PhD and you were studying this? Well, what did you think about career? What were your kind of career ambitions kind of at that point?
Yeah, the career ambition for young PhD students in India was to somehow land in a great lab in the United States and continue their passion for science. And so I was fortunate to present my work at International Union of Pharmacology meeting in Sydney, and I ran into the thought leader in toxicology and in pharmacology called Professor Ronald Estabrook. He came and he heard my talk, and then I was pulled into UT Southwestern Medical Sciences. And my ambition coming in there was to work with this great professor and obviously become a great academician or a great technology leader in pharmacology. That's how I started my earlier ambition into career, is to become a pharmacologist or to become a professor of pharmacology.
So you thought at that time you were going to remain in the kind of research guise?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
And I joined as a postdoctoral fellow at University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center at Dallas, Texas. And that's an incredible institution that has, at the time when I joined, had 4 Nobel laureates, including, Michael Brown and Joseph Goldstein, who got Nobel Prize for the entire cholesterol area. And I myself happened to, after joining Professor Estabrooks and Peterson's labs, worked with the Nobel Laureate. And I can share that when we have time as well. So that's how I started. So the early career ambition was purely, again, I didn't have a specific goal, whether I should become a professor or whether I should become a industry-oriented career, nothing like that. It was purely love for science and problem solving.
Yeah, no, got it. So now looking on a number of years, and you look at the career you've had, looking back, would you have been surprised if we were to go all the way back then and we were to outline the career you had and the journey you kind of took? Would there have been any surprises?
The biggest accomplishment for me personally that was really a fondest memory, I would say, is the breakthrough publications that we had working at UT Southwestern Medical Center. As I was mentioning before, when I joined, Professor Estabrook asked me, hey, how do you want to shape your career? I can give you a problem. You can publish at least 2 papers an year, guaranteed at the end of 3 years, you will become a toxicologist or a pharmacologist at a Merck or at a Johnson & Johnson or Pharmacia, any of these big pharmaceutical companies. Or I'll give you a problem, no success guaranteed. It could be a total success or it could be an utter failure. Which one would you choose? And I told him the latter. and I would say, great teamwork and collaboration with Professor Deisenhofofer, who got Nobel Prize in 1986 or 85. He got a Nobel Prize for understanding the molecular mechanism of photosynthesis in plants. And that's for which he shared a Nobel Prize. So I went to him and I said, I have this problem. I want to collaborate with you. And lo and behold, he was such a great man and another great influencer on my career. And we were able to actually solve the 3-dimensional crystal structure of drug metabolizing enzyme called P450. Cytochrome P450, and that is, I believe, the most quoted publications in the field of cytochrome P450 and drug metabolism area. And that was really a great celebrative moment when we actually had the breakthrough crystal structure of that enzyme, and it was published in Science, and it was a great career moment for me. And that was the fondest memory. And I would say the most recent one that I feel equally celebrative is at Green Venus, when we actually got the seed produced for a improved quality romaine lettuce, and it was done in less than 3 years, from concept to bringing it to commercial trials, which is almost the speed of which is unbelievable in any vegetable breeding, and without any breeding involved, directly taking that. I felt so highly rewarded when we did that in 2019.
Oh, excellent. So how did you, just on that example, how were you able to circumvent something, as you said, that would take 50 years to kind of produce within kind of 3 years? What was the key?
Well, I think, again, right, I mean, you look at a problem from a holistic approach, and you are not tied to what technology or toolbox that I use, right? And so back in 2015, when I just joined Trekzone to build the Ag Bio division for Trekzone, what I really looked at was, hey, food, especially vegetables, is an incredibly important for people and for planet, etc. And you take something like a romaine lettuce, almost 50% of that lettuce that is coming out of the field is thrown away, right? I mean, you go into a lettuce field, it is quite revealing. They take this romaine lettuce, which is like a head, they chop the top, they chop the bottom, and they really peel off all the outer leaves that are bitter. Then you are left with a little, maybe 30% of the lettuce that comes out of Mother Earth is taken, and then they chop it off. And after it is chopped off, if there are pinholes in the packaging, it's going to destroy almost another 50% of it. So by the time from the time the lettuce comes as a head from the Mother Earth to the time it is on your plate, imagine the burden on the Mother Earth we have put and how much of product is wasted.
Incredible, isn't it? I've never considered it, essentially.
It's unimaginable. I mean, so talk about impact on Mother Earth, impact on the quality. I mean, how many consumers would go into a retail store and I personally would be turning bags to see that bag that doesn't have all those pink and mushy lettuce that's in the bag. And now imagine if I go and it's so much of time spent looking at, so this is like, we said, wow, this is pretty important issue and an important problem. What can we do to address this problem? And when we looked at that problem, again, it's a mission problem-oriented approach. And if I have to do it through breeding, and I have to knock out the genes that are involved in that browning and pinking, and there are 18 of them in a lettuce, it would have taken 60 plus years.
Wow. 60 years in order to, so basically the breeding process would have taken 60 years to reduce or take away those genes.
Even if you have most robust genetic markers associated with the lettuce. I mean, look at lettuce. Lettuce is like third most consumed crop on the planet, right? Especially in the Western world. And the diversity of the lettuces, how many different lettuces in how many slots and all of this stuff, it's pretty complex agriculture. Yeah. And yet we have somehow adjusted to this thing and said, it's okay that we waste all this lettuce. It's okay if it has, I mean, romaine lettuce and leafy lettuces are the most nutritious lettuces, right? Compared to an iceberg, which is a commodity, no taste. It's more like a decorative, guilt-free consumption food that I have something green on my plate. To actually eating something that makes a difference for my health and wellness. And now you take the whole romaine lettuce or leafy lettuces, it's pretty incredible that we waste so much of food. And so it was almost like, hey, what can we do to look at this? And for us, the passion was, can we do something about it? And if so, can we actually reduce all the time? And now imagine if you're doing, even if you're doing 20 years of breeding on a lettuce, imagine the economic impact of the breeding on the planet, how much land you have to use for breeding, how much water, all this stuff that if you calculate that entire burden of 50, 60 years of breeding and 2 to 3 years of getting something to the field, it's amazing.
Yeah. And tell me, is the landscape and the technology you have able to use now?
Yeah.
Is it the suite and the tools that we have that has changed rapidly over the last few years for you to be able to do this so quickly now?
Yeah, when it comes to the toolbox, obviously, right, a key aspect of that romaine lettuce product was using gene editing. And but gene editing is only a piece of the pie, right? The greatness about gene editing is that it's a technology that is available to the small institutions, small companies, all the way to academic institutions. Everybody can use this technology, and it is and the story around this, obviously, right? So but it's not just doing the gene editing, it is really the holistic approach of how we were able to knock out almost 60% of all the genes involved in this browning, pinking in the lettuce in one shot, That's called multiplexing, a complex technical term. But what it means is, the precision to knock out multiple ducks in one shot. And we were able to do that. But the key was, how quickly can you actually get it to the field? And for that, we needed to actually think about not just about editing, but about the product, not just the process of editing.
Got it.
And this, yeah.
So what does that look like after you've kind of edited? So you've taken the, as you can tell, I'm not a molecular biologist, right?
Okay.
But you've taken the genes out, essentially. You can cut them out through using the technology, as it were. And then what does that process look like? What do you then do?
Then you have to actually take the edited cells and produce plantlets out of that. And those plantlets have to be at a mega scale so that those plantlets would then produce the seed. And then you take the seed and then you actually identify those seed that have the genotype or the fingerprint associated with the genes that you're looking at. And now ramping up the seed production very quickly to take it to a multi-mega scale.
Amazing.
So editing is just the upstream process of just editing the cell. But the rubber meets the road when the seed goes into the field and the breeder is going to look at that, or the grower is going to look at that and say, yeah, that one really works. And that means in the process of doing all of this, you haven't changed anything else with respect to that lettuce. It has the same shape, same color, same disease package, same all of this stuff, right? I mean, this is amazing. This is truly amazing, the power of technologies that we have now, bringing them all together, not just focusing on one minor aspect called editing. Editing is one, piece of the pie. It's not the whole pie.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds very exciting and, very kind of liberating. And you worked in Trekzone for a number of years, right? And in Trekzone were kind of real kind of proponents of, using genetic kind of technologies to kind of recreate better kind of products, as it were. And
absolutely, yeah, it was a great mission. Obviously, Trekzone was the early leader in this whole space of systems biology, and so I was fortunate enough to be part of shaping the whole food and ag aspect of it. Initially, I also led the food sector, looking at technologies that would bring holistically in the context of biologicals and crop protection, etc. So, but the predominantly my effort within Trekzone was to build this ag bio division. And when I joined, we were 3 people, including myself, to a team of 50 plus, and it was a great journey. It was great team effort and incredible people. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, because it just seems like the last few years, there is so much kind of understanding and demand for sustainability, for instance, the consumers kind of really adjusting and changing their kind of perceptions on this. And I'm wondering, when you look and see some of these kind of consumer trends, for instance, what you really see out there and how much they have evolved.
Yeah, it's a great question, Simon. And you see, if we were to, look back, companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter, all these companies that we're talking in the digital world, who built these companies? Corporations or people?
People. Yeah, individuals.
The exception to the rule has been the food and agriculture. Now, what's happening in the last 2 decades, I would say, is now people are getting engaged. People are getting passionate. People are fundamentally recognizing that food and health are intricately linked. And it's an incredible challenge and an opportunity also, right? The opportunity piece of it is people wanting to know about, hey, how is my food produced? Where is it produced? What am I eating? And you take even crops like avocado, fruits like avocado, right? 50 years ago, avocado was not consumed in any other part of the world except as a heirloom fruit in South America. Now, fast forward to 2021, Indian retail stores are selling avocados at 500 rupees a fruit. And it's amazing. I mean, how fast something like an avocado has grown into a mainstream fruit. It's incredible to see that, right? Because people are getting engaged. It's incredible to see all this passion around berries, all the passion around the grains, all the passion around the fruits. And I read somewhere, don't quote me the exact reference, but maybe this could have been an FAO document. A century ago, humanity used to consume more than 1,500 species of food plants. And look at the list now. And I would say mainstream agriculture, probably if you really, really look at it, is not more than 50. So what has happened to all the diversity of the incredible food that we were consuming? Why did that disappear? Because the last century, humanity has been incredibly reductionistic in thinking versus systems-based approach. Right?
So where's it gone? Where have all those, where have they all gone? I mean,
because we thought that food really means giving me my calorie. Okay, so food basically is looked at as some kind of a macro nutrition, caloric rich and nutrient poor, versus the diversity of the food that we were talking about, whether it is pulses, lentils, millets, grains, berries, fruits, vegetables. All of this diversity is not necessarily calorie based, but it is the holistic food that brings together even how that calories are managed within the body. So this is now you have triggered my passion. I can go on this for forever and ever. Now that's that plant-based food is now coming back mainstream, and that plant-based food aspect, it's great to see that, because people are now aware of it. People are recognizing I am not just eating my cereal with Cheerios or with all this carbohydrate. It is not just this refined, bleached, deodorized soybean oil that is completely caloric, zero nutrition in it. And recognizing that I have this incredible opportunity to consume these berries, these avocados, these cherries, and everything that brings together the holistic aspect of nutrition to my plate.
Yeah, exciting. Absolutely. But I figure that waste, food waste, as you've touched upon it before, is a major issue with with this kind of shelf life, and it's a major kind of problem with within the kind of fruits and vegetable space, isn't it, really? And I would imagine there's lots of opportunities for companies to be able to kind of address this.
Yeah, and obviously the opportunities are not related to one specific technology, right? It is really about looking at that holistically. How do I produce sustainably? How do we deliver it sustainably? And how do we ensure that the consumer also understands about the value of the holistic food-based approach? So in each of these elements related to how it is produced in the context of impact on the planet, to how it delivers the end benefits to health of the people. So there is a health of the planet, there is a health of the people. And in between, there are all kinds of different technologies, tools, and everything. And I think I'm seeing that overall, right? The three main themes that I'm gathering over the last decade that have really emerged in this food and ag space are, sustainability, looking at Mother Earth, the cover crops, the biologicals, all that space is one vertical. The second vertical we are talking about is the plant-based food, whether it is plant-based protein, plant-based nutrition, whether it is whole fruit or, even processed grains and things like that. Crops like even hemp, which were completely ignored, crops like flaxseed, which, so or sesame, or, the grains like quinoa. And it's amazing to see all the diversity and companies and investors being excited about that. And then the third space is, of course, saving the water and all of that stuff through indoor farming, making food produced locally with the digital ag. I mean, overall digital ag, which includes indoor agriculture, right? So these three themes are the most exciting opportunities that I see in the food and ag space, but that's the core, right? But beyond that core, you can think about areas like cosmeceuticals, the beauty outside and the beauty inside. The beauty outside as in skin, and the beauty inside is all about the gut bacteria in our guts, talking about the probiotics, all the way to the incredible healthy components that are associated with the fruits and vegetables. It's amazing. And you can see I'm a vegetarian all my life. And you can see that passion in the context of talking about food and nutrition is really something that has been overtly ignored in overall in medicine. But the good news is, in the last 10 years, at least, my on a personal story, my daughter is a pediatrician, and she's a physician, pediatrician, and so amazing to see that how much passion she has for food. She grows her own vegetables, and she does it. I mean, because the medical people are also now saying, yes, there is truth to this. Food is intricately linked to our health, and we have passionate discussions at the dining table when she asked me about all this stuff that we eat, the traditional Indian food where we make the mangoes soak in sesame oil and then put a bunch of red chilies, and this oil is now turning into deep red color. And there was a myth that the deep red color will cause gastric irritation. And I was explaining to her when she was studying her medicine, just go do an analysis on that oil. You will find incredible carotenoids. You will find sesamin. That the deep red color is associated with lycopene and all bunch of carotenoids that are naturally extracted from the chili powder. And you are consuming that is loaded with vitamins and loaded with nutrients. 1 teaspoonful is enough.
Making me hungry.
You are from UK, right? I mean, the national dish is the Indian curry, right?
Exactly. It really is. Yeah, it really is. It really
the
is.
best and most expensive Indian food I ate was in London.
Was it really? Yeah, we have very kind of upscale Indian kind of cuisine here, actually.
Yeah.
In fact, I went to a friend of mine last week who made some wonderful Indian food, and it was like a dosa with it was kind of South Indian. It was dosa with a kind of dal curry on it, and it reminded me. So I'm Jewish, and what we do, we talk about the chicken soup, which is good for the soul. The Jews have chicken soup and I felt the same kind of thing eating that. I felt it was good for me. Just have this wholesome kind of.
And the example you are giving there is a perfect combination of nutrients. Okay, so you have the rice flour, which is the carbohydrate, and you have the lentil that is added to the dosa batter, that is the protein. And on the top of it, you're putting some oil, which is hopefully some sesame oil that gives you the fat. And if you put it in the right vegetable thing that you actually eat it with, you got a perfect nutrient loaded session there with the dosa consumption.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I found it incredible in the UK, how the vegan revolution, which clearly it really started on the West Coast, but it's become so popular now. I would say consumers are really changing their habits, and even consumers, you know, even 50-plus-year-old meat-eating consumers who are actually taking it upon themselves to eat less meat. You know, I might not be giving meat up completely, but
Yes.
they're going for other options. And,
Yes.
you know, it just seems that the amount of choices now that consumers are kind of having are really, you know,
Absolutely important point. The whole point here is not about conversion, but about choice. So the replacement model economically wouldn't even work, because that means you are actually, constricting the pie. The whole idea is to expand the pie and create more choices, and creating more choices builds more industry, builds more investment, builds more opportunity, versus I'm going to cut this industry or cut that industry and replace with something else. This whole mission we are seeing about food is really not about a constrictive reductionist model, but it's an expansive, holistic approach for health and wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think after COVID as well, I think COVID really escalated that further as well, you know, and, I think following COVID, I mean, people are, I think, more aware of that, and just think they're going to take more kind of effort or more care about that. There's more recognition that you are what you eat, essentially.
And the retail business, as I see the statistics across the globe, has actually increased, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, because people are more and more, I mean, I know that people are eating more healthy choices like carrots, and because if you eat all that calorie and you don't have an opportunity to go out and what we have been hit with this pandemic, it's a double-edged sword. So you need to really manage highly nutrient, approach, and also watch the calories. So anyway, I might have been a little bit carried away with my passion for food and health a little bit here. So
No, it's great. No, absolutely. No, that passion that comes across really strongly. And I'm just wondering, when we look to the future, you know, and we look to some of the technologies you've mentioned, specifically as it relates to breeding as well, what the future really might hold. Because, you know, when we go into the grocery aisle and we buy fruits and vegetables, there's not really that much innovation, really, when I think about it. You know, we all buy the kind of standard things that are there. And I'm just curious what that might look like in the next 20 years or 10, 20 years, and how this will really evolve, actually, and the different choices the consumer is going to be able to make.
yeah, no, I think the overall challenge, as you know, and I read your recent article as well, which was very well done, by the way, and I commented on it on LinkedIn as well. The major challenge is really, when it comes to agriculture, is primarily speed, right? And on the top of it, when it comes to food innovation is generally perceived as more experiential rather than scientific based. Okay, and so you're and then all the emotion associated with the food also creates the confusion that it is more opinion based rather than a consensus based, and everybody has their own opinion. And there is some truth to it, because food at the end of the day is individualized, it is experiential, it cannot be maybe generalized too much. If I love my pecans or walnuts, etc., I love it, it is great for food. But what if it's behold, I am immunologically compromised and I have allergenicity to a small peptide in that walnut? It's a nightmare. So it's very hard to deal with innovation in food and try to generalize it. But at the same time, you can build teams. So the challenge that we fall into is, again, this reductionist approach, taking something in food and ag and generalizing it to everything. No, you can't do that. You have to really be cognizant that food is a holistic phenomenon. Innovation cannot be like, hey, you eat this, you will cure cancer. Really? No way. If that was the case, all the things tested in the rats would have been cancer curing by this time. Human being is more complex. Food is more complex. Agriculture is more complex. So we have to look at these themes for innovation and bring the themes of innovation to the consumers in the food and ag space, like it has happened with berries, like it has happened with fruits like avocado, like it has happened with bringing in alternatives to highly carbohydrate rich, highly processed opportunities into bringing more fresh and creating these themes of innovation.
Yeah.
And in doing so, being cognizant that there is no one magic bullet that solves all the problem, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my perspective about food and ag in general. Is it has to be theme based. It cannot be like, I mean, even biologicals, right? I mean, one biological that may work or a stimulant or a peptide or whatever will not work across all the species. You have to really looking at, you know, cover crops. You have to looking at soil health. I mean, this is an amazing time. That means actually more opportunity for small companies, more opportunities for small things that may not, you know, be magic bullets, but will move the curve along with people.
Yeah, no, incredible. I mean, it's incredible to think some of the, you know, the companies now which are being funded and the investment coming in to solve some of these problems. It's, you know, it's almost like, you know, the growth of the industry, you know, the early stage adopting of science and technology, you know, is, you know, it's an incredible force of nature. Now, I'm sure not all of them will succeed, but you know, they're really, you know, the birth of companies who are set up with a mission to kind of solve.
Amazing, no?
You know,
Amazing.
so strong. It's so strong.
Amazing. It is absolutely great to see that, I would say, because, you know, the human intelligentsia in a way has to come together and looking at the whole system, not just about our own kind, but also looking at it in a, you know, this is a system. It is not it's not, you know, our medicine has become symptom oriented, not system oriented. Our food has become more reductionist approach, that if we have this and this, I have my food taken care. No, it's not really like that. And our approach in the context of you know, looking at how we have evolved even socio-economically with all the social media, etc., that is playing a big role in the context of what we believe, what we don't believe, how we fall into our own little traps of beliefs and not, you know, we read a Twitter message or something and we conclude this is very bad for the whole humanity. And so we are living in a very, very interesting dynamic world. And that means investments would have to be looking at this. Some of them are, hey, this is mission driven. I don't know what I would get out of return on investment on this, but it is part of the whole flow here. So we'll see how it shapes up. But I as a, you know, one of the key players in the context of looking at all this space, working for big corporation to being playing in a small niche startup kind of a mode. A couple of my rounds in my life, it's amazing. That the enthusiasm in the food and ag space, including even not only food and ag, but including all the stuff that's happening with cannabis, the medical cannabis, the recreational cannabis. That's another wave that is completely now driven by consumer orientation, right? And the opioid crisis. There is no way the humanity is sustainable with the opioid crisis, taking these and the problems it has caused to us, the economic burden of healthcare. and how we need to actually be thinking individualized approaches for some of these, health and wellness solutions. And cannabis is another example, great example of what is called the green gold revolution.
Absolutely, absolutely, very exciting, and a conversation for another day. So, Sekhar, it's been brilliant having you on, and loved our discussion. Thanks for sharing, and
Thank you, Simon. It was
really
fun,
enjoyed.
really. Thanks for bringing up all that nostalgia, both the positive and negative, through 35 years of my career. I appreciate it.
More positive than negative, Sekhar, definitely, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you.